Why should we have a historic district ordinance? And these are excerpts from our ordinance, things that, come on in folks, there's plenty of seats. These are a couple of phrases that open out the ordinance, and I thought I normally hate reading, but something that's up here on the thing, but they're kind of nice, you know? The first one in our main ordinance says, the oldest and most historic part of the city is of great importance for the social, economic, and general welfare of the city. I love that. The residents of the city of Madison are proud of its world-renowned historic landmark district. Yeah, I think so, we should be. And the historic area contributes to the economic vitality and quality of life. The historic district ordinance protects the architectural integrity of the district. That's kind of the gist of it. We believe that this district is a source for economic vitality as well as quality of life. This ordinance protects it so that it doesn't get whittled away, it doesn't lose that integrity that it has. And the last, all of the residents of Madison have a stake in preserving this architectural integrity. So, with that in mind, what is the purpose? This comes right out of the ordinance. It's to protect, as you can see, natural and man-made, new development, stabilize property values. And you know, nationwide, local ordinance historic districts, the property values stay the same, even in difficult times, as compared to other districts, which are not protected by local ordinance. So it is a protection for your property values. Civic beauty, local economy, that's one that I harp on a lot, and promote the historic for education, pleasure, and welfare of the citizens. So those are all purposes, and these are coming right out of your ordinance. These are things that are already been said by many people before. This is not a new idea. This is something that the people who started this in the 1960s and then later in the 1980s felt was important. Now, let me just tell you a little. Our historic district is sometimes called an overlay. And there's a bit of confusion about that. We've been going round and round about this with the board. An overlay district is what it is. It means that, what it means is that it is an ordinance which overlays another ordinance. In this case, our zoning ordinance. So in other words, it's as if it's another layer on top. And in the rule, when you have ordinances that overlay each other, is that the strictest is the one that applies. And many times that's the zoning ordinance, by the way. But that's why when those of you who have been before the board, you'll see in our little notices that we list what zoning district it's in as well. So people are aware of what that other layer is that we are all working within. If you've been before the board, you know you come and you apply for a certificate of appropriateness, needed before you can get a building permit. Now, because of the primary and secondary areas, there's actually a little bit different requirements. I'm going to go through those. But it is not needed if you are doing repair and maintenance. And we can talk about what is repair and maintenance and what is not. So I hope you have some questions on that. It's always a big one. In the primary area, you need a C of A if you're going to plan to demolish a building, if you're thinking of moving a building. And here we get into one that everyone has a lot of fun with. If you are making a conspicuous change in the exterior appearance in a primary area, both historic and what's called non-rated or non-contributing buildings. So you need a C of A when you're making a change, a conspicuous change to the exterior appearance. That can be done through additions, reconstruction, alterations, but the only thing that does not apply in that case is color. You can make a very visible change in color on any building, and that is not going to be even considered in our ordinance. Now, the primary area, we're still on primary. In addition, you'll need a C of A for new construction of a principal building or an accessory building if it's visible from a public street or alleyway. And we checked all that. Now, in the original ordinance, those of you who have a copy of it, you'll see that trees were included. That's not been taken out of the ordinance yet, but by agreement, we do not consider trees in the historic board. That has been turned over to the tree board some years ago. However, it's surprising people. We still have in the ordinance that if you are in a primary area and you change your existing sidewalk, you need to come before the board. That is not one that we've been following up on as strongly as we might. But it's in there. Now, signs are in the ordinance as well, but we have done what's called fast track signs. By that we mean we have a separate application. You do not have to come before the board if your sign, and this is primarily for businesses, if your sign meets the regulations, which are printed on the back of the fast track solution, so you easily can figure it out. Most of the sign makers in town now are very familiar with what these regulations are, and they know how to recommend a sign that's going to be easily done. A fast track application, you bring it, you fill it out, there's no fee, there's no wait. You come in, if it meets the regulations, I sign off it, the building inspector signs off of it, we give you a copy of it, you're done. That's your C of A. Okay. And existing walls or fences in a primary area, if you are going to change an existing wall or fence, and we've had several fences come in, then you must come before the board. Now, a secondary areas, the demolition is the same. If you're going to demolish a building, moving a building is the same. A conspicuous change, but here only to a historic building in a secondary area. And that is by addition, reconstruction, alteration, but again, same thing is true, not color. Now, new construction, same way, if it's visible from a public street or alley. A change in sidewalk. Again, the signs and the trees are the same in both cases, whether it's a primary or a secondary area. Yes, yes, sir.
When you read that, you said that it's in a public street or alley.
Yes, sir.
I'm just wondering, because that doesn't say alley and this doesn't say alley.
Right.
Is that a change?
We had that checked. It's not a change. When I first came on about a year ago, we had a lot of confusion about that because it isn't clear. And so we had the lawyer look it up. And the reference, and he went back to, remember me telling you about the overlay?
Yeah.
The basic, I believe it was the zoning, and went back to define what was a public street. And that includes alley. So from this point on, we have got public street or alley in all the kind of communication with it. Because when he explained it to us, he said, yes, that word street means a public way, and that is either an alley or a street. And we were hoping that would be the case, make it a little easier on all of us, but that is what he determined, so we have to follow the lawyer's reading on that. But I did not copy, and it doesn't say that in the preview, I know. That's why there's been, over the years, there's been a lot of confusion about that. And people, we're trying to get some of this information out, trying to get a lot of the confusion out of it, but sometimes we've had to check too. I just went through the fast track certificates pretty clearly for you, but there's also a fast track for Monterey Series 500 storm windows. The board approved that, so if you happen to be using that particular storm, you can also fast track that. I'm hoping in the future the board will be able to have additional other kinds of simple things, another brand of storm windows, for example. And we've talked maybe about fences to get into a fast track so that there are less things that have to have the longer version of decision. But anyway, the procedure, and I don't have a lot of this. I'm counting on you guys to have a lot of questions. So you meet, what we're recommending now is that you meet with the preservation planner when you are considering doing something that might fall within these categories. The term conspicuous change has been debated quite a bit. And as it turns out, from what we have been able to research, conspicuous change, it's kind of like beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? So in this case, the person or body who determines whether it is a conspicuous change is the Historic District Board of Review. Not the owner, not the contractor, not someone else. It's the Historic District Board of Review. Now, the Historic District Board of Review is bound by the amendment to the ordinance to also follow the guidelines. So what people do when they come into me, I can help them see what is likely to be approved by the board. It's not 100%, but that's what the counseling helps sometimes, because people often don't know what is likely to be approved. So it's been a good thing. We've had most people have their applications approved, and most people have come in and discussed them in advance. So that's why we're trying to work that way. And I always review the guidelines with people or give them a copy of it. We fill out the application. Now, there's also a requirement for notification. It used to be, prior to this new board, that people had to purchase, what are they, $650, $670, the certified letters, a piece, and you'd have to send them, you have to write the letter, we give you a sample, send the letter with all the things and all the envelopes and all the green cards and everything, to everyone whose property abutted you or across the street from you. Now, some people were getting as many as 8, 9, I think actually, I think it was Bob Green, had to do 30 of them. And at $6 something a piece, that can get to be very expensive. So, luckily, we got new rules and procedures taken up, and I think some of you folks here have been in the transition. Who here had to do letters and certificate? Yes, okay. Well, we've transitioned now, so what you do is you come in, and when you get your application, when you fill it out, we determine how many faces that your building has that face on a public street or alley, and that's the number of signs you get. We fill them out, you post them. They cost $2 a piece. So your maximum amount that you would pay would be $8, as versus, what, $180 or whatever it was. Anyway, we hope that's been helpful. People so far are pretty good about it. The only times we've run into trouble is when we had a wet and rainy day, and somebody posted it outside, and I think we had a sign walk off the other day, but other than that, it's been working pretty well. Anyway, once you're okay, you can get approval at the next board meeting. For general information, normally applications are due on the first Wednesday of the month. This month, it was the 9th, and then the board meeting is usually the 4th Monday of the month. This particular month, because it's May, and the 4th Monday is the 28th, which is Memorial Day, it's the 30th. And so it jumps to the Wednesday there, but in most cases, that's what you can expect.
Excuse me, after, if you're approved, can you take the permit out of your window, or does it have to stay up until the work is done?
Oh, no, you take it out at the day of the board meeting.
Oh, that's good.
You can take it out then, yes.
Everybody thinking there forever. Well, I thought maybe the work had to be, it had to stay
No.
until the work, because everyone's asking us if our house is for sale. Because they see the sign.
You got a green sign. Well, no, maybe they want to buy your house, it's so pretty. But no, you take it out then, and what you'll do is you will sign a sheet of paper on the day of the meeting. I will provide it to you, and it says, it's an affidavit, and it says, I kept my sign on all those many times. And that is the legal requirement. Yeah?
But if the work requires a building permit, they have to show the building permit.
The building permit does have to, if it requires it, that's correct. But not our notification sign. That's only meant to be up for the time period between your application and the meeting. When it's, and the whole point of the idea of notification is, if your neighbors have questions about what you're doing, they can come. And that's what it says on it. And that's what the legal notice is about. We also do a legal notice, which has to be in about the day after the deadline, and it is in the paper on the Saturday after the deadline, so everybody can look at it and see what's going on. We've actually had an interesting incident. We have a fellow who's coming before this meeting, and he put up his sign, and his neighbor behind him, he wants to tear down a shed that's, well, it's actually practically falling down, and they have a party wall. So now they both decided to come in together so that they can take care of working together on this little project. And I thought that was kind of nice. So the sign did work in his case. I put down just a few clues about how board decisions are made. It's kind of important that everybody here tonight, and I think most of you do know this, but I'll be boring and run it past you again. The decisions this board makes are based on the ordinance and the guidelines. It's not a personal opinion. It's not somebody saying, I like this thing better than that thing. And our board, and that's why I passed out for you guys a copy of our rules and our ethics, the code of ethics. Because this board has committed itself to being as objective and as kind and as considerate of all of the applicants as they can possibly be. And I want you to know that is what they're expected to do. Now, there are a couple little quickie things in that though. The board must act on an application. If they do not do one of these actions, approve, disapprove, modify, or extend the application, it will be automatically considered approved. Tricky. Almost had that happen one time until the lawyer said, whoa, no, you better vote on that one. And they did. So, other kinds of things, the considerations, the effect to the building, of course, the effects to the neighborhood and the surrounding properties as well. In the demolition section of the ordinance, you'll notice there are a lot of special considerations. Demolition is probably one of the reasons that local ordinance historic districts began to appear. I think in the whole country, that's what started the movement, because demolitions were occurring, particularly in, maybe high profile kind of East Coast places where there are a lot of pressure from developers. And they were occurring a great deal. So bottom line, I always feel that the bottom line reason and rationale for all of this is that demolition is the most serious thing that can occur. And so this board, and I think most other boards and commissions, take demolition very seriously. And if you are thinking about a demolition, we will hope that you'll have very good evidence, very good rationale. You can defend it, you can say why. It also has a lot to do, the considerations the board makes also has a lot to do with not only whether you're in a primary or secondary area, but how your building was rated in the survey. In other words, what level of significance does your particular building have? For a building of a high level of significance, I mean, we all know those kinds of buildings. You know, the Shrewsbury House, for example. For those kinds of buildings, which would be rated outstanding, changes to those buildings are treated with quite a bit of scrutiny, and as they should be. And as you move down the scale to a contributing building, depending upon what and where it is and what kind of a building, then it becomes less scrutiny. But still, you want to have changes that are compatible, that fit within kind of the guidelines, that follow the rules. But there is a hierarchy, but it's not based on somebody's personal opinion. It's based on a rating, which hopefully has been professionally ascertained, and on an agreement about that kind of integrity. In the guidelines, there's a great deal of discussion. Well, I should say in the ordinance, there's discussion, and the guidelines flesh out these notions of the kinds of considerations that the board should make. I just put a few of them together here, but if you'll look in the guidelines, you'll see that there's a lot more information. Things like visually compatible height. If you're building a new building, for example, you want to build one that maintains a streetscape, maybe visually compatible in the height of the building. And the proportions of the fronts of buildings compatible with that. I think all of us have gone to other towns, not Madison, and seen these really horrible gap 2 situations where you have a beautiful streetscape and then, oops, all of a sudden you've got this building that looks like you just don't know where it came from. You know? That's what we mean by proportion of building fronts. And openings, we sometimes call that fenestration. Rhythm of solids to voids, rhythm of spacing, relationships of materials and textures. You know what I mean by that, brick and all good things. not so much of the plastic stuff. And roof shapes and other things, but that's really fleshed out in the guidelines. There are a lot more pages, and I didn't want to make a huge big list for you guys to have to think about here. Here's some breakdown of the board. You can all read it. By the way, they are appointed by the mayor. I usually, because we are a certified local government, I'll talk to you later about that, we have special rules that we have to follow with regard to trying to find the very most qualified people we can for the board. And this is basically right here, out of that amendment from 2010. This was what was added during that time. So that gives you a sense of the kind of folk that we're looking for here. And the CLG guidelines are very, very similar, almost word for word, a little bit more wordier than that, but basically the same meaning. They have to apply in writing, and they have to be residents of the city, but not necessarily of the downtown. And 4 of them have to own property or lease in the downtown. And they cannot, at this moment, can't serve on any other city board except the Plan Commission, although we're trying to work with the tree board because since the trees are gone from the historic district ordinance, we think it would be nice to have a member of the historic district ordinance sit on the tree board, and the tree board would like that too. So we're trying to work that out. But that's basically. Okay, certified local government. We got this distinction last year in record time. There are only 19 certified local governments in the state of Indiana. It's like being an arm of our state historic preservation office. There are a number of things that they would have us do that they would normally do, but since we're a certified local government, we will do them for them. That has to do with things like if there are new National Register nominations, we would review them. Section 106, which is a part of the federal government requirements before federal money is used, such as in roadways and things, and we review those for them. So there are a number of things. The benefits of it are that we get some kind of nice assistance. We have just been awarded a small grant to put out a thing called the Building Owners Manual, and that will be done. It starts in June, and we'll hopefully have it out before the summer is gone. That we're going to mail to each and every property owner. That will have a very user-friendly, hopefully happy, pleasant discussion of what it is that people need to do and need to know if they buy property or if they own property in our historic district. The board and staff, the powers are limited to the historic district. And again, we talked about that public street or alley, and that's where that comes from. We can fast track some things, but both myself and the building inspector must enforce the ordinance. It's a law. We must do it. The building inspector gets to be the bad guy. He gets to do all the fun things. We do have a Class A infraction as a penalty. I think it hasn't always been enforced in the past. I'm not sure how far we're going to go with that in the future. That'll be a fun topic. But we do have it. It's in the books, and that's okay. That's the end of my short presentation. Hope it wasn't too boring for you. And I thought you'd have some